All right, I would say good morning, but it's really not. The purpose of us getting together today was to advise you of an arrest for a February murder. Before we get into that, we're going to go over quickly 3 different murder investigations for murders that occurred last night. Everybody was previously aware of 2, but there was a third one that occurred. We'll start with 720 North Goodman Street. On July 21st at about 6:20 p.m., officers were called to the area of 720 North Goodman Street for the report of a man shot. At the corner of North Goodman and Derringer Place, officers found the victim, 48-year-old Todd Jones, shot at least once in the torso. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Thus far, the investigation has revealed that Mr. Jones was standing at the corner when a lone suspect approached on foot, pulled out a gun, and shot him multiple times at point-blank range. The second murder occurring last night was at 236 Whitney Street. At about 6:30 p.m., officers were called to 236 Whitney for the report of an unresponsive female. Inside the residence, they located 38-year-old Constance Henry. She suffered trauma to her upper body and was pronounced dead at the scene. This is 236 Whitney Street. It's a multi-unit boarding-style house. The third murder that occurred last night that you previously were unaware of occurred in the 700 block of Jefferson Avenue. At about 11 p.m., a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old male showed up at URMC, both sustaining gunshot wounds. The 16-year-old sustained a non-life-threatening wound to his torso, and he was ultimately discharged from the hospital. The 15-year-old sustained multiple gunshot wounds to his torso and upper body. He underwent emergency surgery, and unfortunately, he died about 2 hours later. During the course of the initial investigation, we learned that the 2 victims, along with a third individual who was not injured, were driving around the area of Jefferson Avenue and Flint Street in a stolen vehicle. Based upon video we have reviewed thus far, this stolen vehicle was traveling with at least one other vehicle, and they were circling the area of Jefferson and Flint Street at a high rate of speed, driving recklessly, including driving through and over fields. At some point, when in the area of Jefferson and Flint Street, multiple gunshots were fired at the vehicle, and 2 of the people inside the vehicle were struck. We're still investigating as to whether the gunshots came from another vehicle or from somebody that was standing out on the street. One of the 2 individuals inside the stolen vehicle with the deceased victim are being charged for being in possession of the stolen car. One of the 2 were remanded to the Rush Juvenile Detention Facility. It should be noted that that person was out of custody on a previous stolen vehicle charge, and he had an active warrant for failing to appear in court after he was given an appearance ticket. The Major Crimes Unit is conducting all 3 of these investigations, and we're asking anybody that has any information or any video to contact us, and the numbers and contact information is on the release that we're given. At this point, we'll talk about an arrest in a murder that was made yesterday. The murder occurred at 275 Denver Street on February 18th of this year. On February 18th at about 2:40 p.m., a vehicle was driving down Sile Street and stopped in front of school number 25. A passenger exited that vehicle and began firing multiple gunshots from a 9mm handgun at a man walking down the sidewalk. Thankfully, the man being shot at was not hit, and neither were multiple other people in the immediate area of the gunfire. Like I mentioned, this took place directly across from school number 25. Later in the evening on February 18th at approximately 9:20 p.m., 35-year-old Jermaine Wilkins was walking in the area of Denver Street and Melville Street when a suspect exited a vehicle and fired at least 3 gunshots at him from a rifle. Wilkins was shot and ran onto a porch on Parcells Avenue. He banged on the door of the residence, pleading for somebody to call 911 because he was in fact shot. Despite life-saving efforts performed by both citizens and officers who arrived on the scene, Wilkins succumbed to his injuries on the porch. After an exhaustive investigation, Major Crimes investigators ultimately determined the individual who fired the gunshots at 2:40 p.m. on Sile Street was the same individual who shot and killed Jermaine Wilkins on Parcells Avenue less than 7 hours later. That individual was identified as 17-year-old Kylan Marbury, City of Rochester resident. On July 21st of this year, members of the United States Marshals Violent Felony Fugitive Task Force were tasked with locating and apprehending Marbury. Marbury was tracked to a hotel in Henrietta. He was ultimately spotted outside of the hotel and taken into custody by members of the task force as well as the RPD SWAT team without incident. Marbury was charged with murder in the second degree for killing Jermaine Wilkins and reckless endangerment first degree and criminal possession of a weapon second degree for shooting the 9mm handgun on Sile Street, endangering the lives of multiple citizens that were in the immediate area. Marbury was arraigned in front of Monroe County Court Judge Meredith Vaca and remanded no bail, no release. He was transported to the Monroe County Children's Facility in Rush. I can tell you now additional charges against Marbury may be presented to a Monroe County grand jury. There are still many ongoing investigations into multiple additional violent criminal acts involving guns, shootings, assaults, and stolen vehicles. For that reason, we are releasing a mugshot of Marbury and asking anybody who has been victimized by him or any of his associates or witnessed him committing additional crimes to contact the Major Crimes Unit at 428-7157 or email majorcrimes@cityofrochester.gov. Although some of the crimes may be related and targeted, others are random acts of violence and crimes of opportunity. And with that, we'll take a few questions.
There's lots to unload here.
Yes.
A lot, fortunately. Is Marbury being investigated for other murders throughout the city?
I can tell you that Marbury is being investigated for multiple other crimes that have been occurring throughout the city over the course of the last 12 to 18 months.
Would you say that would be murders, or are you just going to speak in general?
I'm not going to be specific, but I work in the Major Crimes Unit. I investigate homicides as well as other serious assaults and shootings.
All right, now I have a quick question. As you mentioned, we've had several people shot yesterday and killed, and at times it can feel like Rochester is bleeding and that our violence has no end. The mayor has said, long said, that our violence is linked to a few bad apples. It's scary to think that a 17-year-old is one of them, and as much as we're happy to get an alleged killer off the streets, what is your response to all of this?
All right. Back in on September 19th of 2020, we had a tragedy at 220 Pennsylvania Avenue, right? Jaquela Young and Jarvis Alexander were shot and killed, and like 15, 16 other people were also shot. We had a press conference after that, and a lot of things were said in that press conference. Anybody who hasn't seen it, I suggest you look it up and go back and watch it, because everything that we predicted was going to happen back then, here we are a couple years later, and every single thing that we talked about has come to fruition. And the frustration and the rage that we felt back then, we still feel today.
And do you believe that the 17-year-old is connected to any known gang?
This is a question that always comes up. Is he connected to gangs? Sure, he is. But what's the definition of a gang, right? We have in Rochester, we have a bunch of kids that hang out together. Quite frankly, they're not smart enough to be involved in an organized type of gang, such as some of the historical ones that we're familiar with. But they like to call themselves their gangs, but they're too stupid to actually be a real gang.
So you're not saying that this has Crips, Bloods, you don't feel that they're involved in it?
Not in this, not in what we're talking about here today.
And I just feel like we're having these press conferences over and over again. 17-year-old this, 16-year-old that, 15-year-old that. It's out of control. What are the people of Rochester or families or the police department to do anymore?
It's a great question, and I know the mayor and the chief will be speaking on this later on today. Again, we talked about this back in 2020, and there's a lot of stupid things that have occurred as far as legislation and stuff like that since then, okay? And we are feeling the brunt of the ramifications from some of those decisions made by people that have no idea what they're doing. We're feeling that today. We have people dying in our streets literally every day. Look at Mr. Rios. He was killed over on Union Street, sitting on his porch by a stray bullet, okay? And the statement that was made earlier that we have a small contingent of people in this community that are doing bad things is very true. And we are doing absolutely nothing when we catch these individuals to rectify the behavior that's going on. What are we doing? We're giving them a piece of paper and asking them to show back up in court, okay? And the people that think that they're helping these kids by giving them a piece of paper after they get caught in a stolen vehicle driving 90 miles an hour through city streets, give them a piece of paper to show up in court. They think that that's in the best interest of the child. You know, they're either extremely ignorant or they really don't care, because that is not in the best interest of these kids. We are responsible. When I say we, the system is responsible for these repeat offenders that continue to terrorize not only the community, but to kill themselves.
What's the department's immediate, not reaction, but what's something that you can do in the short term?
The police department can go out and can arrest these people, and they can put them in jail, and they can introduce them to the criminal justice system. That's what the police department can do. The police department can't keep these kids in jail or in a detention facility after we've arrested them. Once we arrest them and they get back out the next morning or that night, it's out of our hands, right? So it's not what can the police department do, what can the legislators and the lawmakers do to change the laws so these kids that need help, okay, and that can't be on the streets and haven't earned the right and have given up their right to live on the streets because they're shooting people, what can we do to keep them in and get them the assistance that they need, okay? It's not a police department problem. We arrest people. The system is supposed to try to help these people and rehabilitate these people, and that's not happening.
And I want to get back to Marbury, correct?
Yes.
So, was he known to police?
Yes, he was known to police. He was known to police. We've known about him for quite some time, and I can't get into his record and his contacts with the police department, but what I will tell you, and I'm speaking hypothetically here, okay, is that it's not uncommon for us to arrest somebody with a gun, have them released, and have them go and continue to kill and shoot people. And we have individuals that we've arrested for murder, 17-year-old individuals that have probably over 24 contacts with the system in the last 18 months. And when you have over 24 contacts with the system and you get arrested for guns and 5-6 months later you're killing people, it's not the police's fault, okay? Number one, it's that person's fault because he doesn't know how to live in a civilized society. And number two, it's the fault of the system who fails to hold him accountable for what he's done.
Are you telling me to read between the lines of that statement saying that he has had contact with police?
I can't comment on what he has had. I'm giving you hypotheticals that I see every single day in a lot of these individuals that are of this age that we're arresting for murders.
As far as Marbury, do we expect him to be tried as an adult?
Yes, I'm not going to speak as to the system because, quite frankly, I don't understand it, but he is going to be charged as an adult. I don't know which court it is. I don't know what it's called anymore, but he's in some trouble.
And do we believe that he could be connected with the 19-year-old that was shot on Union and Wells? Do we feel like they could have had a conflict?
The 19-year-old shot on Wells Street.
That ended up killing Rios.
No, I thought you, okay, no. Yeah, I don't think that, I'm not going to comment on that at this time. What I can tell you, going back to the first victim that was shot on Siles Street, we have absolutely, during the course of our investigation, and this is going back to February 18th, the day of the murder, during the course of our investigation, we have not uncovered any connection between Jermaine Wilkins, the victim that he's being charged with killing, and Kylan Marbury.
And how bonkers is it for like a 17-year-old to be going out there, shooting individuals, killing an individual? How bizarre is that for you as
It's not bizarre to me. It's not bizarre to me at all because I see it every day. And it's apparently bizarre to some other people who wanted to change the way we do things, but it's not bizarre to me. It's actually, it happens all the time, unfortunately. Last question.
Last question, just a data question. How many crimes can you say that the 17-year-old has been linked to?
I can't say that he's been linked to any.
You can't say he's been linked to any?
I can't say. I'm not saying that he hasn't been or isn't linked to other crimes. I can't say at this point in time. He's being charged with these 2 crimes right now, but what I can tell you is that the investigation is still very active. The reason of releasing his photo is because I know that there's people out there who know this individual, who have probably been victimized by this individual, or has seen this individual committing other violent acts.